Welcome back to the Crypto Deep Dive. I'm Laurie, here with our resident blockchain analyst, Nick. Today's episode is a big one. We're dissecting GameStop's headline-grabbing $500 million Bitcoin buy, why altcoins like XRP and HBAR are stuck in neutral, and what the latest ETF and regulatory news means for the whole crypto space. Ready to dive in, Nick?
Absolutely, Laurie. There's a lot to unpack, and GameStop's move is shaking things up in both the crypto and traditional finance worlds.
Let's start with the big story. GameStop just bought 4,710 Bitcoins, worth over $500 million. Nick, what's the thinking behind this move?
It's a massive pivot for GameStop. They're a company that struggled with the shift from physical to digital gaming, and their core business has seen sales drop by nearly 30% in just a year. So this move is about diversification, putting some of their sizable cash reserves into Bitcoin, hoping to ride the wave of crypto adoption and maybe even spark a turnaround for the company.
How does this compare to what we've seen with other companies like MicroStrategy?
Great question. MicroStrategy, now just called Strategy, set the template for this kind of move. They've bought billions in Bitcoin over the past few years, and their stock soared as a result, attracting investors who wanted Bitcoin exposure without actually buying crypto themselves. GameStop is clearly hoping to replicate that success, but it's not without risk.
What are those risks?
For starters, Bitcoin is notoriously volatile. GameStop bought in at prices near all-time highs, around $105,000 to $109,000 per Bitcoin. If the price drops, their investment could quickly turn into a liability, especially since their core business isn't exactly thriving, and their stock actually fell 10% after the announcement as some investors bailed out, worried this was a distraction from the company's fundamentals.
So, is this a smart strategy or a desperate gamble?
Honestly, it's a bit of both. If Bitcoin keeps climbing or even holds steady, GameStop could see huge gains. But if there's a crypto downturn, they're exposed. It's bold, but also risky, especially for a company already under pressure.
Let's talk about the broader market. We're seeing all this excitement around Bitcoin, but altcoins like XRP, HBAR, and XLM seem stuck. Why is that?
There's a clear divergence. Bitcoin is attracting institutional and corporate money. GameStop, MicroStrategy, and others are all in on BTC, but there's almost zero movement into altcoins at that same level. The main reason? Regulatory uncertainty and a lack of clear use cases that big companies are willing to bet on right now.
So even as more people own crypto globally, it's mostly Bitcoin leading the charge?
Exactly. Recent reports show that nearly 1 in 4 people worldwide now hold some form of crypto, but the bulk of institutional and strategic investment is flowing into Bitcoin, not the altcoins. Altcoins are basically range-bound, trading sideways, low volume, not much momentum. Until there's regulatory clarity or a killer use case, they'll likely keep lagging behind.
You mentioned regulation. What's the latest there, especially with ETFs?
The big news is that the SEC has started reviewing WisdomTree's application for a spot XRP ETF. That's a big deal for the XRP community, but the process is slow. There's a 21-day public comment period, and the SEC can take up to 240 days to make a decision. So while it's a step forward, actual approval is still a long way off. But in general, this spot ETF is good news. It means that the fund will not buy the underlying asset over the counter at cheaper prices directly from Ripple, but will buy XRP as the underlying asset on the market through exchanges. If we get more of this action, this should be a driver for price appreciation.
And what about broader crypto regulation in the US?
That's the elephant in the room. There's been a lot of talk, bills in Congress, promises from both sides of the aisle, but very little concrete action. Until there's real regulatory clarity, especially around altcoins, most institutional money is going to stay parked in Bitcoin.
So it's a waiting game?
Pretty much. The market is stuck in limbo. Every time there's a new ETF filing or a regulatory headline, we see a little excitement, but then things stall out again.
That brings us to the last big theme, frustration. There's a sense in the crypto community that we keep hearing big promises, but not much actually changes.
Exactly. Whether it's politicians promising a US crypto reserve that includes altcoins or companies teasing major blockchain integrations, there's a lot of hype and not much follow through. For example, we've heard about potential government strategic reserves, including XRP, ADA, and Solana, but so far it's all just talk. No official moves have been made.
Does that impact market sentiment?
Absolutely. People get excited, prices pop, and then nothing materializes. It leads to disappointment and a kind of holding pattern, especially for altcoins. Bitcoin, meanwhile, keeps chugging along, partly because it's the only asset with clear regulatory status as a commodity.
So where does this leave us? Is GameStop's move a sign of things to come, or just another meme stock headline?
It's both a signal and a test case. If GameStop's Bitcoin bet pays off, we could see more companies follow suit. But if Bitcoin stumbles, it could scare off others. For altcoins, the path forward is still murky. Until we get regulatory clarity or a major institutional player steps in, they'll likely keep treading water.
Any advice for listeners watching these trends?
Keep a close eye on the regulatory front and watch what big companies are actually doing, not just what they're saying. Bitcoin remains the institutional favorite for now, but if we see real movement on ETFs or new regulations that clarify the status of altcoins, that could change quickly.
Let's do a quick recap for our listeners. GameStop's Bitcoin buy is bold but risky, aiming to revitalize a struggling business by betting big on crypto. Bitcoin is dominating institutional adoption, while altcoins remain stagnant due to regulatory uncertainty. ETF and regulatory news are moving slowly, but could be game changers if and when they materialize. Community frustration is high thanks to a cycle of overpromising and under-delivering from both industry and government.
That sums it up perfectly, Laurie.
That's all for today's Crypto Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us as we unpacked the biggest stories shaping the digital asset world. Don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and send in your questions for our next episode. Nick, any final thoughts?
Just this. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and always do your own research. The crypto world moves fast. Don't get left behind.
Thanks, Nick. See you all next time.